throws, and it's intercepted. It's intercepted by number 22. That's Clifton. He's got the left edge. Turns on the Jets. Still on his feet. Touchdown, Calaveras. What a play. Up to a running back. That's Ferrante over to the right side. He cuts back up the middle. He's got room. One man to beat. He turns on the Jets. There he goes. Touchdown, Calaveras. What a play. Football with Coach Val. I'm your host, Gil Valtiero, the voice of Calaveras football. This episode, we dive into a new topic, which is Where Are They Now?, where we track down a former Calaveras High School football player and see how they're doing and what's going on in their lives. Our guest today is former offensive and defensive lineman Troy Baker. Troy, thanks so much for joining us. I know you're a busy man. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. I'm happy to be here, ready to go.
Appreciate it. A little background for our Calaveras listeners out there. Troy played at Calaveras from 1999 to 2002 and is a Calaveras graduate of the class of 2003. Troy was named Motherlode League All-League 3 times and was named Motherlode League Lineman of the Year twice. Troy was an All-District and All-State defensive lineman in 2002. He was a captain in the Lions All-Star game. Troy also played college football at Harding University and Butte College before starting his career in coaching. And I know, Troy, there's probably so much more that I missed. And if we sat here and went through your accolades, that'd take up the whole show. But why don't you get us started by just telling all our listeners as far as, you know, where you grew up, where you went to school. Tell us your story.
Well, I was originally born in Stockton, and I think I grew up there till I was about 4 years old, and then we moved to Valley Springs, and I lived there all through high school, and my parents lived there for probably about 20 years until they moved back to the Stockton area. I played at Calaveras. I did wrestling, football, track, and field, and then I originally went out of high school to Harding University, where I went there to be a D lineman. And it was a little bit of a hard trip for me to go there, to be honest. It was in Arkansas, so it was the first time really in the South. And it was a very strict Christian school as well. And I really it wasn't made for me, I would say. And you know, had some issues, to be honest with you. I had probably a very non-traditional route of how I finished my college career. Went back to junior college, went to Butte, ended up landing at Butte and playing offensive line at Butte instead of D-line. I switched over, and we did pretty well there. It was, I think we went 7-4, but the year right after us, they won the national championship, pretty much a lot of that same team. And then I ended up going to Faulkner University in Alabama, where I played offensive line, but I had some kind of false positive, I guess you would say, of a heart issue, and actually never finished at Faulkner playing. So actually I never played a game there. And I was ruled, well, it kept me out my whole last year of eligibility. And then I came home and went to a different doctor here in California because I had some kind of heart issue, and they kept saying, you know, potentially I could die at any moment if I keep playing. Oh, wow. So they wouldn't clear me. And they wanted to send me to all these like clinics. What's the big one in Minnesota? The huge one, like Mayo Clinic.
Gotcha.
There you go. I think in Minnesota to go get it checked. And didn't end up going there to get it checked, but I went to California and went to like a sports cardiologist guy, and he read all the reports and did everything. And he said, I would have cleared you after the second test. And he said, I don't know why the doctor there didn't clear you.
Wow.
So I ended up not playing. So that sucked, but I ended up starting my coaching career, which I've been doing now since. I had one small stint coaching at Calaveras, and then I've been coaching nonstop since 2012, I think. 2010. Excuse me.
Okay, let's back up just a little bit. When you played at
I gave you
Calaveras,
lots.
yeah. When you played at Calaveras, who was the coaching
Yeah.
staff there? Who were your coaches?
I had Canepa was our head coach. I think he was a first-year head coach my freshman year. And then had him all through high school. And then we had Coach Weatherby and then Anderson, who you both had on the program already.
Right.
We had I'm blanking on myself here now.
So Coach Anderson was your O-line coach, probably.
Yeah, he was Canepa was kind of like the O-line coach to be at that time. But Anderson was he was there, but he was also the D-line coach by himself.
Gotcha.
So we'd switch over with him.
Gotcha. Okay, and then after your stint with the health scare and not being able to play, what was your first coaching gig?
Then I coached a middle school in Alabama, a little private school in Montgomery, Alabama. And I started out as an O-line coach for them, and then moved up the next year to the varsity to coach them as well.
Okay.
And that's where it kind of all started. And then I came back to California, and then I went to Butte, and I became a coach there at Butte Junior College. And yeah.
Okay.
Been moving ever since, it feels like.
Yeah. Now, for those of you listeners not aware yet, right now, Troy or Coach Baker, I should say, is you're the head football coach in a team in Germany, right?
Well, it's a weird story. I'm in Germany right now, but I was a head coach of a team in Poland this year.
Gotcha.
And our season ended, and the German football league is still going. So I got hired to come in and kind of look over the team and make sure things are running smoothly, and also doing some coaching as well.
Okay.
See if I can help in any way, pretty much.
When you were in, tell me about the transition, or like how did it even come about where, I'm an American. I played college football, high school ball. I dabbled a little bit in coaching at junior college. What transpired that made you go, I'll go coach overseas in a foreign country?
Yeah, there's probably two things that made me transfer over to Europe. Originally, when I was going to school in Alabama, I came over. My buddy, who was also a former player, Julian Macias, was in Spain for a whole year. So I said, "Oh, come visit." So I went over there, checked it out. We went to a couple different places in Europe, and I thought, "Wow, this is really cool lifestyle, and how all this stuff is so close. Everything's easy and accessible, and everybody just seems very chill." And I came back from that going, man, it would be really cool to find a job in the future that would pay me to travel, because I can't afford to keep coming over here,
right?
Because I don't have that kind of budget.
Right.
And so I think a couple years after that, I talked to Taylor Bridesman, who is also a former Calaveras player, and he coached in, I think, Division II as well, and some junior college. But he went over to Prague and coached before I ever did. And he was there 2 years and told me about it, that they have this whole system in Europe of hiring American coaches and players to come over and play for their clubs. And I had no idea about it. And I thought, I put it together and said, well, there's my chance to find the job that pays you to travel.
Okay.
And it took me about a year of trying to get on with teams. And then my first team I got on was in Norway. And I never thought ever I was going to Norway. I was a typical American, like, hey, it would be cool to go to like London or Rome or some of these places. that you've heard of, you've seen on TV. But I ended up going to Norway and it had a blast, and from that point, and just haven't stopped since then.
Now, when you first got over there, some of the questions that pop into my head that I'm sure some of our listeners out here in Calaveras County are wondering, when you first got there, tell me about, like, do they have a pretty good understanding of American football, or did you have to start from square one and say, okay, hey, this is the ball we play with, and like really have to start from the beginning, or did they have a good like understanding of what the game was?
I would say there's a mixture of guys that have zero clue, and then there's guys that have been around it, and you don't have to do that very much, especially now. Now there's like a level of play where guys have been playing now. I've met some guys that have played 20 years here in Europe, and their knowledge is very high. And then they'll also be playing with, or a kid will try to join the team who's never played before. So, I almost solely coach 19 and over. So I've had as young as 15 on my team, but we've also had as old as like in the 50-year-old guys that would just want to stay around and play. But most guys are, in their 20s, maybe some early 30s, like, NFL range of ages. But, I've been a lot of places, see a lot of crazy thing. We had like in Norway, my first year, I think we played a 62-year-old guy who was a former NFL player that just came in to help this team.
Wow.
I mean, it didn't last very long,
wow.
but he did play. I kind of explain it as professional rec league.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that kind of segued into my next question, which was going to be what level of football, like, do they have like, specific leagues, and are there rules as far as age groups and that kind of stuff? So you kind of answered that a little bit. It's kind of an open enrollment, open league, I guess.
Well, the senior league, as most people call it, the top league is, most teams don't have the young guys that are like maybe 18 and older, like college age guys.
Mm-hmm.
Will play. Some teams, you might have one guy who's really good that's young that may step up. But the whole league is, in every country, quite different. So the levels change massively through whatever country you're in. But also they play it more like club sports. So they'll have a U11, a U13, a U15, a U17, a U19, and then have an over 19. So they're, in Europe anyway, is very structured like soccer would be in Europe.
Okay.
They have all these different levels, and they want to bring you up through the club to get you to that senior level pretty much. So not every team is that blessed to have that many different teams, but some teams have multiple teams that, last, that these kids are playing from they're 9 years old or something like that. So they get a lot of football in once they get to that age where I'm getting to coach them.
Okay. So, we talked a little bit about like the similarities. When you first got there, how did you handle like the language barrier?
Well, Norway wasn't bad at all. I mean, the Scandinavian countries is like the best English speakers, outside of, the big three, Australia, England, and the US, but they're really good. And a lot of their, I guess you would say, like the movies and everything, this is a weird thing if you don't live in Europe, but like you think of, hey, we watch movies. In some countries, they watch movies and they dub them in, like, say, German or a different language that fits to that country.
Mm-hmm.
So, like Norway, for example, doesn't do that. So they make you learn English. Like if it's on TV and it's an English show, it's going to be in English. If it's Norwegian, it's going to be in Norwegian. So they have like shows. I think there's 2 on Netflix where they film the whole show in both languages. So
Okay.
they have 2 versions where they just do it over. But there's some places, I'll have probably 5 or 6 guys that don't speak English very well. And that's probably the max. most of the teams have had American players or coaches come through there, or, obviously studying. A lot of these guys know 2 to 3 languages a piece. So,
Okay, that's not too
I
bad.
feel kind of dumb. I feel kind of dumb because I don't know more.
Now, from your experience, I mean, you've been in, you said Norway, Poland, now Germany. What's the? I mean, are these guys just like, for let's just go have a good time and play, or are some of them like serious about, maybe I want to get seen by an American team, or they have loftier goals than just a rec league type situation?
Yeah. So in my time in Europe, it is massively changed, and every country the level of play is completely different. Like when I first came in, Germany and Austria were the top level of European football. Like they were the best. They could beat everybody, and they were the best competitive league, and they had the most American imports and the most rules that would help them, get players from all over the place. But there'd be some countries where, it's really bad and they don't have the money to do it. But in the recent years, they've had the NFL pathway program where they have basically a scouting combine, and they invite these European players to come out, and they kind of, if they're good enough, they pick them and kind of put them through a program in the NFL to get them ready to play.
Okay.
So I think just recently, the past 3-4 years, there's been guys drafted in the NFL and the NFL draft out of Europe.
Nice.
I know there's been some German guys, some Danish guys, Austrian guys for sure. So it's getting bigger and bigger. And I think it was 4 years ago, they just started in Europe an international league. So now they have what it's called the ELF, like the ELF, European League of Football. They have like 10 teams in Germany. They'll have 2 teams in Spain, Switzerland, Italy, Hungary, Poland. They had one in Turkey. And it's a big international league that's now in its 4th year. And I think last year they were having games in Germany, or they had a game where they had 30,000 people at the stadium. So it's getting pretty massive.
Wow.
In some of these leagues. So it's just getting more and more, especially with the money. And one of the teams here in Germany had hired the former 49ers head coach as their head coach. So most of the staffs now in that league are American coaches. I would say the majority of them are retired, like Division I or NFL coaches that have come over just to, coach and live in Europe. So like Coach Tom Zula, I think is what his name is. He was the head coach for a little bit for the 49ers. Tom Zula. Yeah.
Okay.
Tom Zula.
Yeah.
And he's the head coach of one of those teams out here. And I always forget his name, but the old offensive coordinator for USC when they were really good, and he coached in the NFL as an OC, and in Hawaii was the head coach. I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
Okay.
But he was out here as well. I mean, every year it's getting bigger and bigger.
Right. Now, I had in here not too long ago, I had Pat Morelli in here, and he was a former NFL referee. And he mentioned, in the early 2000s, the NFL actually had what they called the World League, and they had some teams out there. And, since then, that's shut down and folded. But do you think a lot of what's going on right now with all the current teams and the leagues, is this kind of like a continuation of that? Did they catch the American football bug out there?
I think the cities that had those teams, those NFL Europe teams, yes, those teams that were kind of around that area were really good. Like Germany had a lot of teams and it kept going. That's why they were so much better than everyone else. But these teams in the ELF now, majority of them were former European Euro NFL football teams. Like their names, when they started the ELF, they would take those names because everybody knew them. and kind of use them. So like Ryan Fire was a team, or Barcelona Dragons,
Right.
all these teams were in that league and they started them up again for this league. So, I mean, it's taken, or having those teams there, I think made a massive difference in those select areas.
All right. Well, Troy, I'm gonna ask you to kind of think back now, because I know it's been a while since you graduated from high school, but being that you're still around the game, why don't you share with us? I mean, what are some of the things you learned while playing high school football that you think easily just transfers over to your career and what you're doing now?
I would say, as much as I hated it back then, I would say coaching, learning from the coaches we had and how they pushed us, because there's one thing that I've always had inside of me as a person since high school that I haven't necessarily seen in that many people. Not to brag or anything, because it was just how our team was. But when we had Canapa there, we're going hard every practice, nonstop, 100% every practice. It's not like nowadays where it was, you might have a shell practice. We never were in shells.
Right.
And when we were in shells, he'd get so pissed off that he said we'd never go in shells again. So you'd be like, you're so hard nosed. And I told all these guys this one story all the time, especially O lineman, because I played O line and he was my O line coach. And I remember as a sophomore, I got moved up to varsity, and we were running like a quick trap play, which I'm sure they still run there.
They do.
And he made me run it like 15 times in a row, like by myself, just trapping this guy until I got it right. And I'm dying, about to pass out. And
you're exhausted.
Yeah. And he's just getting on me so much about not doing it correctly. And then after that, I guess I didn't do it correctly, because he moved me to tackle like a week later, and I stayed at tackle for the rest of high school. And then I moved to guard and could do all the things that a guard could do, and the other guys do it. So the thing, to boil down the point, is that I learned, like, I go hard in practice all the time, no matter what.
Right.
No matter what sport it is. I don't ever think like, I'm just going to take it easy today. I mean, there is rest days and whatnot, but when it's practice time, I'm not going to take it easy on my fellow player. To me,
right,
as I've gotten older and learned this, is like, my job is also to help my teammate to get better. So if I got to kick his butt every single play, he better toughen up or he's not going to play.
Yeah. I mean,
and that's the same thing I want to happen to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I bet you got.
I guess
pretty
it's
good.
kind of mean now, but whatever.
I bet you got pretty good at that quick trap, though.
I didn't, because he, like I said, he took me out and made me a tackle. Forgot to pull again my whole career. But I became a very good guard in college.
Yeah, I was going to say, not even in college.
I loved to pull. Yeah, I was like, pulling was the most fun thing you got to do as an offensive lineman, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Once I got to put me a guard, and I was like, oh, this is so much easier,
Right.
But yeah, I didn't get to do it very much.
Yeah, that reminds me, is a former coach myself. We had a team after a game, and we were horrible tackling in space, and so we got our butts kicked. And the following week on Monday's practice, we did a drill where it just drilled tackling in space, and then we were horrible in the drill. But so instead of moving on and just moving on with our practice schedule, we spent the entire practice running that one drill over and over and over.
Yeah.
But we got better.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, when you have the extra days and time, to me, I don't get all 5 days to practice like that, or 4 days. So it's hard to do that nowadays, because you just don't have a time. But like, if you got all day to do that, I mean, you got to do something. Sometimes you got to do that. As a player, it sucks, but you learn massive lessons from it. So you're older, of course.
Right. Troy, when you think about it, how long did you play football? You put all the years together. Did you play Pop Warner?
Yeah, I played 3 years, I think.
So from Pop
3 years in Pop
Warner,
Warner.
Pop Warner, high school, college. How many years did you put in as a player?
I know it's more. I've coached longer now. I think it's something like I think it's something like 10 or 11.
Wow.
Not that long.
Well, I mean,
So
for foot playing, I mean, that's wild.
it's a long time. I know because I've met guys out here in Europe that have, like I said, been playing since they were 9 years old and all the way to like 40
Wow.
in this same team. So you're like going, that's a long time. And some of these guys will go, like my season ended, will go to another league and play. So sometimes they're playing like 20 games in a year. And they'll tell me, yeah, I've played, 1 year I played 34 games. And you're like, what?
Wow.
Or they have these international like championships out here now. And they'll have like 6 teams from 6 different countries go play, and they'll play 2 games in 2 days, like 2 full games in 2 days.
Oh, wow.
And do that kind of stuff. And I couldn't ever imagine doing that.
If we did we did that here, we'd get thrown in jail.
Yeah. I mean, I would feel like death. Yeah. I know that much.
So Troy, let me ask you, all your experience playing, all your experience coaching, what would you say football has done for you and what it's taught you in maybe areas of your life that's not football? So maybe, just in like business or work or personal life, what has football taught you that helped you in those areas?
I think it's just pushing through stuff.
Overcoming
I was
adversity.
always, I mean, that's an easy answer, I think, to a certain degree, but overcoming adversity and what's hard to differentiate from football to like learning in life is weird for me because it's turned into coaching. So it's always been kind of like football to football. But I've learned to be organized, to be honest, is probably my number one thing I've learned.
Okay.
Not just through like football, but I learned it like I wrestled as well. And I always learned that when I'm watching our coaches, I think especially like football and wrestling were the most organized practices, because I can see now as a coach that if you don't have everything planned out, you don't have a plan for what you're going to do, what you're trying to accomplish, what's your end goal of this and how to do that, then you're not being a proper coach, in my opinion. If you're just going out there to, hey, we're going to do this today and that's cool if we get it done. No, it's like, hey, I got 5 minutes for this. We're going to do the best 5 minutes. I got 10 minutes for this. I'm going to make sure we got everything possible that we need in here. Right. And don't leave anything out. And I know that may be a different answer than most people, but like, I think that has become, part of me from watching that, because chaos at practice is chaos in a game.
Yeah,
and all of our coaches, from what I remember, weren't going crazy. They weren't yelling at you and didn't have all of, you had every minute scheduled and planned, and you never felt like you were bored or were things wrong. And those are some of the things that, maybe get overlooked, I would say.
Okay.
Overcoming those stuff is like a great thing to learn through football. But I also think that stuff combined that has led me to at least where I am today.
All right. Troy, why don't you share with our listeners? I mean, you're in Germany now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you share with us what it's like to be a football coach in Germany? What's a typical day look like for you? I mean, you said earlier you guys don't practice every day, so maybe, tell us about what days are like when there's practices or games, or share with us kind of what that itinerary looks like for you.
Well, for me, it's a little bit different than most coaches in Europe, just because if you're a paid coach, for example, I'm a paid coach. So a paid coach is expected to do obviously more than like a local coach who's just doing it and donating his time. So like a normal week for me would be, I get, just like I would say in the States, we get all my film. I'm usually, not all the time, but usually breaking down a full game on a Monday. Whatever games I need, coming up with a game plan, ready to go, because we don't have practice on Monday. Usually we practice only Tuesday, Thursday. We might have some kind of like 7-on-7 practice on a Wednesday or a walkthrough on a Friday, but really your Tuesday, Thursday practices are your main practices where you get to practice everything. So Monday is just what I call my waste day a little bit. You're not going to see me. You're not going to hear me. I'm coming up with game plans. I'm deep in it. It's like I remember watching The Social Network and the guy's like coding and they're like, don't talk to him. He's coding.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
He's wired in.
But then yeah. And then once Tuesday comes, there's some of that stuff in there. I will, do practices, do practice schedules, scouting cards, all the different things that you need for practice. And then I set up like entering my game plans. And so we'll have a practice on Tuesday. We'll go through there. And what's kind of different, I think, from the States to Europe is, like I said, we got those 2 practices. So if you want to install something new, we'll have like a meeting before practice at 7 and we'll practice at 8. So we're practicing very late in comparison because a lot of people work. And so if you go like your first day on Tuesday, you start your practice, you have a new play and it just looks like crap, but it should work. You pretty much have to scrap it right then and there. Like you got to really quickly make the decision of, hey, that play is not working for us. I mean, as a coach, is like, oh, I would love to run this. It's going to work. It'd be so great. And then you go, okay, we can't pick it up fast enough. And it's kind of one of those deals.
Right.
And then Wednesday, I go through the whole practice film and I'll write notes on every single play for every single player pretty much and send it out to them. And then we'll have like a meeting at night where we kind of do like a Zoom through the team and we'll watch it together and kind of go over it. And then we have a Thursday practice. And by Friday morning, the game plan stuff's already ready. We'll have games on Saturdays and Sundays. So you send everything to get printed, get laminated, and do all that stuff. And then you got to make sure your roster is all the same because we have to turn in our roster and we can only have 45 guys in a game. So if we have more on our team, we have to make sure everybody knows who's going, who's doing, depth charts, everything, bus lists, bus times, all the same similar stuff is kind of the States in that regard. And then we'll play a game on Saturday. It's just, to me, I try to make it as similar as it is in the States because that's the best way I know how to do it.
Right.
So we arrive 3 hours before a game, do our walkthrough, do all of our special team walkthrough stuff, and then I just let them guys, I go away from the locker room for about an hour, let them guys do their thing, stay away from them, and then, pre-game it, and then go play a game and start all over again.
And rinse, lather, repeat.
Exactly.
So,
and some places we get weeks off, so it's much easier. But when we have like back-to-back games and you don't have a lot of help, you very quickly have to be super organized and learn how to do it in a very structured way because no one else is helping you.
Right.
You got to break it down. You got to do it. You got to make the scouting reports, all those things. And sometimes, my second year in Europe, we only had 2 coaches on the whole team. So I'm coaching every special team and doing all of offense and coaching O-line. And one other guy is doing the defensive coordinator, and I'd coach D-line or something.
Right.
Or we might have 2 teams. So I coach the junior and the senior team at the same time. So it becomes a lot, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah. I'll tell you this, it beats working 80 hours a week in a college environment, to be honest. I mean, that's not for me.
Right.
That's why I kind of did it. It ends up being more like a 30, 35-hour week. So you get a lot more time to go travel and see some things potentially,
Sure.
especially on off weeks.
I
remember in Switzerland, I went to 13 different countries that year.
Oh, wow.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah. So do you use what software do you use? You said you were breaking down film. What do you use?
We use Huddle.
Okay. Yeah, that's
what Huddle, just like you guys.
Yeah, that's what we use.
Yeah.
I was just curious. Huddle's international now.
Well, it's kind of a pain in Europe just because you can't, when you have problems, it becomes a bit of an issue trying to talk to customer service.
Right.
But yeah, we use the same thing. Yeah.
So Troy, my next question is going to be around, I mean, obviously, playing at different levels and then now coaching at different levels. What are some of the biggest challenges you've had to face in your coaching career?
Challenges is a little hard because I haven't had some of the experiences that I know a lot of American coaches or guys that have been coaching a long time, especially in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Most coaches will say the parents and the administration are the worst part about coaching, right? I actually haven't had to deal with that almost ever. I've never had a parent come up to me in Europe and say anything about football.
You mean that 62-year-old's dad didn't come down and go, how come my son didn't get in there more?
Exactly. It's never happened. And that's one of the biggest positives of coaching in Europe. I mean, most of the kids' parents, grant you, don't know very much about football in the first place or don't understand the rules. But I hadn't really had to deal with that, which is really good. So I would say the hardest part for me would be finding guys that are like willing to dedicate themselves to getting better and being on the team.
Gotcha.
Just because it's a little bit different circumstances. I would say in the States, though, for me, the hardest part was, especially when I went on the college side, was you have no life. I mean, you're waking up, going to 6 a.m. weights, finishing film at 9 p.m. or later. Then, at Butte, we would have 3 a.m. days where we wouldn't leave the office till 3 a.m. And then we're back at, 7 or 8 in the morning.
Right.
And to me, you don't meet anybody else outside of your little circle. So it wasn't like I didn't enjoy it, but I would also the time restraints. And then you go, all right, Friday, I get a day off before the Saturday game. And then, no, you got to go to those high school games and recruit. This is something many people don't think about, but that's probably, the hard thing to deal with in the States as a college coach anyway. I know every level is a little bit different as far as things they got to deal with, but my hardest thing in Europe, like I said, is getting guys dedicated, but there's not a lot of long-term jobs here.
Right.
So most people get hired for like a season. Maybe you get lucky and you get 2 or 3, but that's about it. So you don't really have that job that you can just stay at forever and build a life. So those are the things that really are hard to deal with, especially as you get older. Yeah. I know these aren't like normal answers, but like,
no, I mean, they're normal.
I don't deal with normal football.
So let me ask you this. A lot of our listeners are current Calaveras High School football players now. They like listening in and all that stuff. What advice would you give to a current player at Calaveras High right now that's thinking, you know what, when I'm done, I want to be a coach and coach football when I'm older? What advice would you give that young man?
So if you wanted to be a coach, don't act like you know anything. Especially your first couple of years, because I remember my first year, my very first job at Calaveras, I was a D-line JV coach, And I thought I knew so much more. Like I was going to go in there and tell all these old guys what they're doing, you know. And you realize very quickly, you really don't know. I mean, you might have some ideas of how to play that position. Don't get me wrong, but like you don't really know what the hell you're doing. You haven't been through all the stuff. You don't know what it takes yet. And I would say go in with an open mind and try to soak up as much as you can from each coach. You know, there might be many things you don't like about a coach or you do like about a coach, but soak in the things that fit for you and help you to further along your knowledge. Because to me, I think in every little stop I've had, I've learned a positive or a negative thing to do with coaching, you know, and if you're not open to that and you're not open to change and you're not open to just, I guess, having that naive feeling like you don't still know anything, you know, you can learn a lot and be really, really good, really fast, you know, and just being, oh, I just want to learn it up. I just want to soak it all up and listen to these old guys that have been around it forever, you know?
Right.
You know, and then that's every young coach. And now that I've gotten older, you know, in coaching, I see it with the young coaches as well. Like here in Germany, I'm here to help actually a young offensive coordinator. It's his first year. And I haven't been here that long, so I can't really say how it's going yet. But, you know, the offensive guy, a young guy, always thinks they know what's best. This is what I should do, blah, blah, blah. This is the best thing. And you go, that's not always true.
Right.
You know, there's 1,000 different ways to be great at football. And you just have to find the one that fits you and your team.
Yeah, I would definitely say I got better as a coach as the years progressed. When I was younger, it was almost like all brawn. Let's just keep running through that wall until I move it. Until you finally realize, oh, wait a minute, if I take a step to my right, I can run around the wall. Why try to run through it?
Yeah. I remember this one from when I was young is I think we had like a 65-year-old offensive coordinator in one team in Alabama. And I was only, my second year. And I thought, you know, being young and dumb, every single guy on our team I can coach to be good. And he would used to tell me, you know, that guy, to a certain extent, you want to help him and you get better. But sometimes you realize, okay, that's not who that guy is. That's not who or what he's best at. And, you know, and then, I mean, he had a bunch of sayings, but like he used to always see, then you have the athletic guy that knows how to do everything. And you go, okay, I can coach that guy. You know, it was like, hey, sometimes you can't, unfortunately. It's like this humility thing or ego thing that you think, or I thought for sure, I can coach everybody. And that's not necessarily the case because sometimes, you know, I have to say, if I'm coaching O-line and we have an O-line coach and I'm trying to overrule him or something like that, maybe he knows what that guy needs more than I do.
Right.
And it helps us be a better team, or he knows that position better than I do. He knows what they're good at, what they're bad at. And, you know, it takes all those little tiny, tiny parts. And you got to have those different guys on your team because, especially as a head coach or a play caller, you're not with every position group telling them how to do it perfectly or how to do this, blah, blah, blah. You're relying on information from your coaches and watching film. So it becomes like, don't think you got it all. Sometimes you can ask for the help. Sometimes you just have to give up and let that kid grow to get to that point, or decide maybe he's not a football player, you know? So there's times where you go, I know it sounds awful in my opinion when you say it out loud, but there's just guys that are football players and that aren't football players. And it's just, you know, how it's going to be for the rest of time. And as a coach, sometimes you're just spending time. All right, I can only help this guy because he listens. He wants to do it. He can do it, you know, and he's going to give me everything he has. And you go, I need to spend time on all of you guys, but sometimes it's not feasible.
Right.
And you have to like kind of divide your time up to these other guys. So
yeah. So,
that one is, like I said, it sounds awful when you say it, but it's just kind of a reality of being a coach, unfortunately.
right. So any other specific like do's and don'ts that you tell a young high school athlete that wants to be a coach later? Like, make sure to do this, don't do that. You know, anything around that area?
I don't know about as far as coaching. I think anytime you can get a job when you're young and just teach it, it's going to be a positive, whether it's young kids or older kids, because like they say, if you want to learn something as best as you can, teach it.
Right.
And just having those basically mental reps and learning the language that you want to teach these guys in takes a long time for a lot of people. I mean, I've seen, guys that have never been a head coach or OC for like 20 years of coaching, and then that's how long it took for them to get there and be able to do that, just because they're learning, or they just, need the reps at seeing it more. And then once you get to that position, the good things are going to start happening. So people will notice you,
right,
no matter what level you're at. If you're doing a great job and you've focused in and got everything dialed in, you're going to get those opportunities no matter if it's high school, middle school, college, whatever. After that, just keep working and getting the reps and dealing with the kids and the personalities and the different obstacles you have to get over, because those create a really good coach after a while.
Definitely.
It's just like anything that you get the coal and it becomes diamond or whatever. I mean, you're just chiseling away as much as you need to. Some guys have to do it more and some guys don't have to do it as much, but take as many chances you can, even if they're like camps or whatever, those types of things. Because I remember when I coached at Calaveras on that JV team, it was a year I didn't play in college. So just that experience changed me as a football player when I went and played at Butte, because you now have just that one single year of like, okay, I know what a coach is feeling and what he's thinking.
You got to see behind the curtain.
Yeah. And I know, when you also, I remember this one time, I know this is maybe off topic, but this is a Calaveras story.
I love it.
When I first coached at Calaveras, and I think they still do it. Maybe they still do it. I don't know. But Anderson lived right there in San Andreas, so everybody goes and watches the film and has a beer or does whatever they do. And I just remember going there the first time and just listening how much. And I don't want to like reveal for all the current players, but how much coaches are just talking on people and players, and just like, it was like, oh my God, I can't believe this.
Well, but sometimes for the coaches, it reveals a lot when you see it on the field, and then all of a sudden you see on film, and you go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and it was just like watching coaches watch film right after the game. And especially if you had a loss or something, is like one of the most liberating experience to me as a coach, because you get to see like exactly every feeling and every thought of what that coach is thinking right away. The players get that filtered out version by the time it gets to them. But
yeah, if you're a fly in the wall in that room, you got to have some thick skin. Yeah.
It was very entertaining for me the first year, though. But I was like, "Holy crap! What are my coaches saying about me when I was playing?"
Well, and then as coaches, we always had a saying, the kids like, "No, I made that block," and we'd always say, "The eye in the sky does not lie." In other words, 100% correct. We got film on you that shows you did not make that block.
It's happened to me once or twice where that saying came back to bite me.
Right,
But
exactly.
I always say, you were right. You were right.
Troy,
Excuse me.
no problem. Knowing that hindsight's 2020, is there anything different that you would have done back in high school that would have benefited you now in the career you've chosen?
I don't think so. It would. I know as a player, it would have benefited me more. You know, as everybody probably always says in hindsight, is just working harder and not thinking that you're anything special.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know that sounds like a harsh thing to say, but like, I remember thinking, oh, I'm pretty good. I'm, lineman of the year, this and that. And then you don't know what you don't know until you get told by somebody else, and
Right.
When you get in college and you get that feeling when you just go, I don't need to work any harder. I was this or that. And you get out there and everybody was this or that.
Yeah.
And, that was a hard lesson to learn really quickly. But that one is, I think everybody has that story, but I wouldn't necessarily say there's much that I learned about it, but I was always a very visual person, and I watched people and I watched my coaches, just like you never think about it, but your players are always watching you. They're always listening to you. Maybe someday they'll do something that's similar to you just without even thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And they might have even made a difference. But I always watched, whether it was football or wrestling or track, I watched every coach I ever had and how they taught me how to do it, what angle they came from, because that stuck with me to this day, really, going, okay, I've had this coach and he kind of did something like this. He kind of did something like that. And, you mold it into, Coach Baker 21 years later,
There you
so
go. There you go.
It's, yeah, I always remember, and I'll just say one, I know we're probably getting long on time, but I'll say one quick thing is I always remember Anderson and Canepa. Canepa had all of his sayings, and, he wasn't an easy coach to play for, that's for sure. He demanded a lot, and he gets a lot, even out of his current team that he coaches.
Mm-hmm.
But I always liked that, Coach Anderson would be in that situation the guy that was more lighthearted, playful, would tell jokes, and you'd quickly go from like, I'm super tense because I got a very tense coach, to like, oh, okay, and that was just like, to me, the best thing about being at Calaveras with those, because I just had those. Basically, those were my two coaches,
Right.
and I didn't really deal with many others. So having both of them be like the good and evil, the yin and the yang, I guess you'd say,
Sure.
really, really helped me as a player. So I wanted to make sure that, I know Anderson listens to this stuff, but like, and I don't want to like make him feel too cool, but
well,
played a big part, especially with how I talk to players now as an older guy. Huge part of my coaching.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Coach Anderson, that's why I always describe him as legendary coach. He's been there forever. He's been there a long time. He's a Calaveras guy, born and bred. And he says he wants a section title. And I told him I'd start shopping around for that electric chair to get him down that staircase down to the field as he gets older. So even if we have to do that, we're going to help make sure that we do that for Coach Anderson, because he's been there forever.
Well, Calaveras, I know, has been waiting forever for that thing.
Yeah.
That section title.
They've been so close. Troy,
yeah.
let me ask you this. What's next for Troy Baker? How long do you plan on coaching for? Any other goals or bucket list items that are still haven't been checked off your list? What's next for you?
I think really, as far as Europe, I think there's only kind of one or two options that I could possibly do. in the future. So after this season, if those things aren't realistic, I'm probably going to look back to coming back to the States and coaching. And at some point in time in my career, I would love to be a head coach or for a high school or something of that level, because I feel best with high school guys. I came very close last year. I don't know if you know that story, but came very close last year to coming in coaching a high school team in back in the States. So it didn't necessarily happen at that time, but I think at some point in time it probably will.
Okay.
I would like it to anyway.
What's your family life situation? Are you married, children?
No, this is what I said earlier. This is the hard part. When you're moving every year to 6 months, it's really, really hard to get people that want to live that life with you.
Yeah.
So not yet.
You're married to football.
Yeah, pretty much. It's all I do. It feels like.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
There's I'm sure there's a lot of people out there say, you could be married to worse.
Yeah. I always remember that Departed line about marriage. At least tells you that somebody can stand you. I haven't found that one yet.
All right. I love it. At least someone can stand you.
Yeah.
So Troy, we're about out of time here, but before we go, any last words of wisdoms for all our folks out here in Calaveras County that listen in about football, about coaching, anything that we talked about here today?
No, just keep working hard, guys. Listen to those coaches. Try to be a better part of yourself every day, because that's what it takes if you want to be good at anything. So, and it's an easy answer to say, but it's a hard thing to do. So
it is. It's a lot harder.
Do it.
Yeah, you got it. Well, thank you so much, Troy, I know you're a busy man and really appreciate you doing this for us. I want to thank
not a problem.
Yeah, thank you. I want to thank all of you out there listening. Thanks to Troy Baker for taking the time out of his busy schedule to call in and talk to us. Remember, if you have any questions or comments that you'd like for us to air in a future episode, follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Let's Talk Football with Coach Val. Or you can now text the show a message under the send us a text message link in the podcast page that you're using. And of course, you can always shoot us an email at gilbertvaltierra@gmail.com. Thanks again, Troy. And until next time, we are out. And it's intercepted. It's intercepted by number 22. That's Clifton. He's got the left edge. Turns on the Jets. Still on his feet. Touchdown, Calaveras. What a play. Up to a running back. That's Ferrante over to the right side. He cuts back up the middle. He's got room. One man to beat. He turns on the Jets. There he goes. Touchdown, Calaveras. What a play.